A little bit about each of your companies, if people don't know. Start with you, Simon.
So British Gas, I head up the pricing in the business part of it. And obviously we are going through major changes right now. We're really excited about it. However, there's a lot to think about, and policy obviously plays a large part of that. I think for us, it's more and more about how do we face into net zero going forward.
So Ben Whitelam, npower Business Solutions. We're a major power and gas player. We also provide MOP and DC services. For me, this is about the balance between the pace of getting after clean power for 2030 and the competitiveness of the UK economy.
Phil.
Yeah, thanks. So Phil Brim at NG, Head of Regulation and Compliance, and I would say the important thing I think is really the energy transition and the transition across to green products, and the green messaging is really the theme of the day.
We'll take questions, so keep them as you're hearing. Please make sure you've got something and we'll take it. Let's just start with Labour. What's your reaction been, all of you? And I'll start with you, Simon. Massive changes across the board. Clean power, 2030, 2035, 81% reduction target. The EVs, I could go on, right? Great British Energy. For a major player like Central British Gas, how have you all reacted to that? What's been the kind of, is it something you already expected because it was pretty obvious Labour were going to take power?
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't a massive surprise. The election result, maybe the scale of it to some extent, but no, it certainly wasn't a surprise. If I was to sum up what I think of Labour in one word, ambitious. I was being nice, don't worry. But no, it's ambitious, and I think we need ambition. I am sceptical about how fast we can move versus what they want to move at, but equally, if you don't push it, then it's not going to go anywhere. So I think, how do you try that balance? And there's a lot of scepticism, obviously, out there. There's a lot of scepticism in the media. It's not going to be an easy one, but equally, you need to push it hard. Otherwise, we are going to end up in the same place in 10 years' time.
Ben?
So if we're going with the one word, I'd go with stability for now. So Ed Miliband was the Climate Change Secretary 20 years ago. Well, not quite 15 years ago, perhaps. So it's nice to have a Secretary of State that knows what they're doing for a change, and that's been really nice. The other thing that's really nice is the way that actually Keir has bought into that agenda as well. So it's supported from the top in a way that it just wasn't with the Conservatives, and I don't think we'll see Labour walking back promises with no notice in quite the same way as we did with the Tories.
So you think some regulatory stability for a bit?
Yes, in
I
the
record
direction
this day
they're
right
going.
now.
So here's the stability, right? They've got an aim, they're going to push for it. Yeah. Is that going to make it more volatile in parts of the market? Connections, for example? Yes.
Yeah. Phil?
Yeah, so I think just building on what Simon said about the pace of change, I think the pace of change is really important, and there's real ambition there, stronger ambition. I think particularly with Miliband leading the charge on energy, very experienced guy, so and he knows his brief, so I think that's really quite important. It may not have always been the case before on the politics, but the pace of change is a real challenge, and so how we get through transforming the grid in particular, and getting the right stuff in the right place is really important. Whether we'll see any market reforms on the wholesale side, I think, is also something to watch out for.
What have your customers said? What's the thing that's been, in your conversations? Are they just reeling from all the policies? Are they kind of comfortable? We'll go the other way with you, Phil. Any word from there, or are they just kind of like going along for the ride, dare I say?
More often than not, when having one-to-ones with our customers, it comes down to the levies and the charges. And so just explaining the myriad of different levies and charges and the mechanisms by which they're passed through to customers, either in the wholesale charge or directly onto the bills via a levy, is really a complex area. And even some of the more sophisticated corporate clients struggle a little bit with those discussions.
You two, any input on that, what customers are saying?
So I suppose there's two groups of customers for me, and there's a spectrum, but there's broadly two groups. There's some who are really pushing an agenda here and really want to go towards net zero, and almost don't care a great deal what that costs. So, we've seen some people going for biogas, which is at an enormous premium to standard gas. It doesn't actually come with any certification. Yeah, so there's some customers who are absolutely pushing an agenda here, and you'll see those move a long way towards a PPA-backed their own sourcing of PPAs-backed contracts. But for the majority of our customers, this remains about cost. remains about, you know, keeping their business competitive in a global market, and that's what they want to see, and that's what they talk to us about.
From your side, I mean, big name obviously, and a lot of the implementation, people would say, well, actually, you know, British Gas Centrica is best placed for it. But there's a lot of complexities there, and policy will affect a lot of your customers very differently. What's been their talk to you?
Sorry, regulators? Or
No, but from the customers, yeah.
I mean, a bit like Ben said, there's two different types. You know, it's a spectrum, obviously, but you have those who are very into it.
Yeah.
And then you have those who have zero interest in net zero whatsoever, and it's just a cost increase. And they don't understand the market, they don't want to understand the market. All they want to do is have a cheapest possible price. And if I'm honest with you, from a British Gas perspective, everything which we sell is zero carbon. That puts a small premium on the price in order to pay for the zero carbon. And so we don't win all our customers as a consequence of that, because cost. I think it's moving slowly towards that balance where actually people are recognising we need to invest a little bit, but then what happens is you get levies all over the places, you have it in the price, you know, there's all the transportation and distribution costs which are coming in, and, you know, now we've got things like MHHS and so on and so forth. So actually, from a customer's perspective, it feels like there's costs coming from all angles in order to force this, and that's part of the problem, I think.
Is there an issue really that, you just said it, I think, summed up perfectly. I don't think there's anyone who wants to, let's be honest, I'll say slightly rude word, but no one really wants to shit on the planet, let's be honest, right? So we all know that we want it cleaner, but the cost is mounting up. Labour's policies in the budget, you've seen, and I mean, you all talk to businesses, you've seen the CBI report, you've seen the stuff that's gone on in the EV market. There is a feeling of intense pressure on businesses. Is the cost element now overriding the commitments to clean up? And only the people who are big enough, like you said earlier, can say, we'll carry on. Anyone on this?
Well, perhaps I'll start us off, as I talked about levies to start with.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of work to support energy-intensive industries and the exemptions around network costs, for example, and policy costs have been quite helpful in that respect. At the other end of the market, in the domestic market, of course, we've got the price caps.
Yep.
What I would describe the rest is, but someone else in the middle, you know, what I call the squeeze middle, have to pick up the tab for, you know, those exempt costs and perhaps things that may not come through in the price cap. So I think there are different segments in the market who are facing different costs. And
yeah, but those ones who are under more price pressure, I would assume, and here's the audience, they know, whether they're just parking the net zero side right now.
Well,
has that been the experience or not?
We're seeing a big push on green products, so the ESG theme is quite strong.
Yeah.
But clearly price will always be an issue.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd add is that actually for a lot of businesses, if they can understand where they're consuming, then the two don't have to be in opposition. Right. So, you know, energy efficiency, an obvious way to get lower costs and a greener business at the same time, but equally the kind of growth of flexibility that we're seeing, to the extent that businesses can make any use of that flexibility. You know, some businesses can't, but a lot of businesses can, and we're going to see a move across the UK to the electrification of fleets, electrification of heat, and actually more and more businesses, it's going to be important when they're consuming, and that's the way to get that kind of double win of a greener supply for your business and a lower cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to ask ourselves, what are we actually in the business of? Are we in the business of selling kilowatt hours, or are we in the business of helping manage energy for a customer? It's a big question, and it's going to take years and years and years for it to play out, if I'm honest with you, decades potentially, because it needs to have, obviously, a lot of the changes in the industry come through, but then you need the technology side of it out, and then you need to put it all together, and, you know, people in this room are going to be integral to helping businesses go through that. So it's a very complex question, and I think we can see kind of where it's going. How we get there, no idea.
One of the things that has probably struck me lately, where else would I be but reading the news, is that there seems to be a kind of, not an impasse building, but there's a definite kind of reticence about the whole electrification, right, of transport particularly. We've seen the Stellantis decision for Luton. We've seen what's happened with Nissan. I'm sure lots of you probably are looking at, some of your customers looking at fleet and vehicle to grid. And there's a survey coming out tomorrow, and I'm slightly breaking embargo, but who cares? It doesn't matter. And it's of quite a lot of very important people in the energy sector, and say the biggest problem is grid connections, which is halting all of this. So the policy raft of changes, the price pressures are coming, the instability, we all know that. But the actual thing is people who are, like you said, keen to go, cannot go. For bigger customers, is that the biggest problem for you guys, which is they say, we want to do this, but I can't connect. I'm in a queue for years. Who wants to start that?
So I'll go. It entirely depends on where that business is in its journey.
Right.
So, grid connections are a problem when you're expanding or when you're changing something. For a lot of customers, they're not at this point in time, so it's not a problem. But the moment you want to do that expansion, you want another line in that factory, yes, grid connections can be a real issue, and it can, kill business plans, kill investments.
And just to build on that as well, there's a lot of complexity. You see this in residential space as well, but I think it's even more so in the business space around who pays for it. Is it the business in a building, or is it the landlord? And most businesses, don't own their buildings. So actually, it becomes a bit more of a question of where do you put it? Do you put it onto the mortgage when you want to do more things? And it goes beyond grid connections to solar, to heat pumps, anything which you may be. How do you actually fund it? Who pays for it? And how do you flow it through ultimately to the bills?
Your take, Phil?
Yes, I think it seems slightly odd that we're increasing electrification at the point and decommissioning gas grids, at the same time, and particularly when you've got real problems and congestion on the grid. As we stand, we're all paying a huge amount through the BSUS charges on constraints costs, for example. So that's where it manifests for customers. But in terms of the transformation, it really is an issue that needs to be tackled through the planning system. And I know that efforts are being doubled to try and improve things, but it's the same on the demand side as on the supply side. So everybody talks about the constraints about generation being in the right place, but equally on the demand side, you look at the demand for data centres and where you locate. There are lots of factors that go in, other than the grid connection, into employment and the rights around that, other than the grid connection. So there are lots of things that factor into those decisions.
What are you having conversations about with TPIs? They're here. I'm sure you've all got your conversations there. How do they navigate these policy changes? Because there's going to be more, right? You all probably know hourly settlement, April, I think, is the change there, right? We've got the budget being re-ramped in April. There may be more changes in terms of this industrial strategy. People in DESNZ are working on things like that. Carbon capture will be invested in. There'll be lots of work on the grid. There'll be lots of stuff about incentives, insulation, products, all of these. There'll be new laws around buildings that will affect their customers that have got clients and the energy performance. So how are you, as suppliers, all of you, helping the TPIs get around this? And what would you be, the way to stay on top of policy? Sam, do you want to start there?
So firstly, I would say focus relentlessly on the customer. It's customer first. What do they want? What needs do they need? Where are they being serviced well? Where are they not being serviced well? Because I think that's the way into all of it. There is a lot of complexity as well, and depending on whether you're talking to the larger customers or the smallest customers in the industry, they're going to need very different help through this. So once you've focused on that, I think it's all about how do you explain the costs, like we talked about earlier, and how do you actually say, well, this is the investment which you're putting in and this is what you get out of it. I don't think as an energy industry we've done that at all well yet. I think there's a lot of work to be done on it, but I think that's how it is. It's first customer, and then it's helping them understand the cost and making value-based decisions. So
we run an annual survey of our users, and we included TPIs in that for the first time last year. And TPI's concerns are customers' concerns. One of the beauties of having TPIs in this market is customers can seek help, and if they're not getting it from their supplier, we know that we'll be competed out of that space because TPIs are there to pick up the slack. And actually, that's been good for customers over the years. So typically, we're talking to TPIs about how are we going to help their customers, how are we going to unlock things. That's the generality of it, and some customers want very specific things, and we're very happy to talk to them about that through a TPI. But the generality of it is my customer's got this problem, and it's very much like a customer in the direct space. And we're just trying to support the TPI so they've got the right information so that they can support their customers through the journey.
So a lot of customers will be making their own green journey. And I think, you know, the real value from everybody in the room in terms of TPI value add is to explain products across different suppliers.
Yeah.
So we'll all have a range of different products, which some may be similar, some maybe not. But I think having that credibility and actually finding the right product for the right customer, particularly in the green journeys and credibility around green, I think is really important in the transition.